Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cadence. My name is Steve Boyce. I'll be your host for today's program. I'm so excited to welcome each of you to our broadcast and experience tonight here at Cadence. We're so excited and honored that you took time out of your very busy schedule to invest your valuable time with us here tonight, and we're looking forward to tonight's program. We've got a great show for you folks, a couple of very special guests who I will introduce in just a few moments. They're going to share some amazing perspectives with us tonight from their experience, and it's going to be a tremendous show. And also, as always, here at Cadence, we're going to give you an opportunity to help co-create tonight's experience. We're looking forward to hearing what's on your mind and about your perspectives on tonight's really exciting topic. We may have some controversy here at Cadence. We like to stir the pot a little bit. And we'll be going over tonight's program brief in just a few moments. But folks, before we do, just a few housekeeping tips so you can enjoy your experience here at Cadence. We want to make sure that, again, you take the opportunity to engage with other community members who have joined the program here tonight. And so when we do get to our networking segment, more on that in just a moment, we want to make sure that you're fully prepared to be able to engage in the experience. So as you look across the bottom of our beautiful Cadence environment, you will see a toolbar with some very common and familiar tools. Folks, you know how these things work across different platforms. And first of all, you're going to want to make sure that you turn on your camera and microphone. And then you want to make sure that you engage heartily with other folks in our community. Now, you can move around the environment and knock on different tables to meet different individuals in the community and engage with our guests who will also be throughout the experience at different points in tonight's program. So do take advantage of the opportunity, and we want to see your smiling face, so make sure that camera's on. Now, folks, we've also got the opportunity through chat with the community. So again, along the bottom, you should see a chat button, and you can engage that chat. I see there's folks using chat right now. Emma King describes it as an exciting panel. It is, but I don't think you mean the tool panel, do you, Emma? You mean tonight's guests. But anyway, folks, you'll find that chat button there. That's going to bring a panel in from the right-hand side, I believe, unless you're a lefty. Maybe it comes in from that side. I don't know. Depends on how your browser's configured. Either way, that panel will give you the opportunity to engage in chat, either with those folks at your table or with the entire audience and community here at Cadence. You can also find specific individuals and engage in one-on-one chat. Now, if anybody has any trouble in tonight's program with technology or any kind of issues, we also have a number of staff here tonight who are around to assist you. So you can always find folks at the table if you have issues. You can also put in a private chat if you have a problem, and we'll be monitoring that to make sure that we take good care of you. All right, so with that little preamble in place, folks, let's get to tonight's program. That's why you're all here, right? You've invested your valuable time with us. Well, let's get to it. So on tonight's episode of Cadence, boy, do we have a great topic and two unbelievable guests. We're going to get to them in just a moment. Tonight's topic is webinars are dead, or alternatively, are webinars dead, depending on how you like syntax. And subtitled, Charting a Course for a Memorable Virtual Experience. Look, folks, we've all been in lots of digital and virtual experiences over the last 18 to 24 months. And tonight we're going to be talking about how webinars, the traditional webinar format, we'll get into a little definition of that later, may not be cutting it anymore now that everyone has so much more experience with virtual types of engagement, right? The whole sophistication level has risen. So that old webinar is just feeling tired, right? Maybe it's even time to put it out to pasture. We'll get the answers from our special guests tonight. And certainly, folks, our amazing panel will be diving into just how exactly webinars have fallen behind, some of the new techniques for engagement, new strategies for how to engage your audience in multi-modalities, and what a virtual experience is that would be memorable. What does that look like, right? And some new technologies and experience design techniques that can help you create them. All right, so with that, folks, we're going to go ahead and start our program tonight. We're thrilled you've joined us here at Cadence. This is your monthly destination for what's hot in events and marketing and communications and I don't know, who knows what, right? Could be any surprise here at Cadence. So we do appreciate you making this a part of your last Wednesday of each month. and it's great to have you with us. So with that introduction, folks, I want to go ahead and bring on our two very special guests tonight. And first up is Lisa Jennings, who is the Chief Experience Officer for Wildly Different. And we need Wildly Different in our webinars, don't we? And she's got an immense amount of experience in the hospitality industry as well. Lisa is passionate about delivering interactive events and believes that there is a vital connection between the time for learning and the time for play. Audience at Cadence, community members, welcome Lisa Jennings from Wildly Different. Lisa, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me here this evening.
Oh, Lisa, it's our pleasure. We're so excited to have you join us tonight, and we can't wait to hear some of your perspectives on our very exciting and provocative topic, webinars are dead. I love adding the question at the end. But before we get to some of that discussion, Lisa, where are you broadcasting here from tonight?
I am broadcasting from the beautiful area of Clearwater, Florida. I've got a gorgeous sunset getting ready to happen right in front of me.
Oh my goodness. Well, you have to turn the camera around and share that with the community at some point. Just
Maybe.
kidding. We didn't tech check that. So that, yeah. The team's already in my ear. I don't have an earpiece, but I know they're like, no, Steve, no, we can't do that. And Lisa, is Florida your typical home, or are you from another part of the country?
I'm from Orlando, Florida. I've been living here for the last 30 years off and on, and love to call Florida home. So many more people are these days as well.
I know, mad rush to the Sunshine State's beautiful down there. I myself live outside of Atlanta, also a beautiful state. What state isn't beautiful in its own way, right? Lisa, tell us a little bit about Wildly Different. What's so wildly different going on in your organization?
Sure. Well, Wildly Different's been going since 2003, and we do all sorts of gamification and play-based activities, whether that's for team building events, oomping up corporate get-togethers. Of course, before the pandemic, the majority of what we did was in person, but fortunately, we were running virtual games even before that hit. So we very quickly decided to go into full steam. Virtual games has been pretty much what we've been doing ever since. However, I am pleased to say that live in-person events are slowly making a comeback.
Yes, that is good news. I know I'm feeling a little collective anxiety in our community because we all want that to happen, of course, for a variety of reasons. Lisa, that sounds tremendous. And again, folks, later in tonight's program, both of our special guests will be sharing some of their contact information with all of you. So we would recommend reach out to Lisa if you've got new needs or opportunities for gamification or any kind of highly engaging experiences. Wildly Different is a great team. And Lisa, thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to bring our next very special guest on, and then we're going to get to our topic and dive in and get your folks' perspectives here. So with Lisa on board now, I'm excited to bring on our second very special guest. Junaid Ahmed has his own podcast, Hacks and Hobbies, folks. Hacks and Hobbies. Look it up. This is one of the most popular podcasts that you will find. You want to get this on your calendar. You don't want to miss an episode. Junaid has created a studio, as you can see, optimized to help others learn about the importance of great video content. And boy, do we love great video content here at Cadence. I know Lisa does as well. Junaid is a UX designer turned storyteller. Love that. And inspires many to create better content using his knowledge of filmmaking, problem solving, and technology. So welcome, Junaid Ahmed. Great to have you on the program tonight.
Thank you so much, Steve. I am honored and happy to be here. This is awesome.
Wonderful. Well, we are so excited to have you alongside with Lisa tonight. Now, Junaid, where are you broadcasting from tonight?
I'm broadcasting from Virginia, Northern Virginia, close to the capital.
Beautiful. Love the state of Virginia as well. I don't know its motto. I have no interesting facts about Virginia. Junaid, anything to share about the area in Virginia that you live?
Yes, so the motto for Virginia is for lovers. What kind of lovers? Mountain lovers, bike lovers, bee lovers. Basically, that's their campaign. Virginia is for lovers.
Great.
Awesome part about Virginia, the weather is always predictable. But then you might every once in a while get a scattered storm that the weather might tell you, hey, it's raining, but it's raining somewhere else and not where you are.
Interesting. Sometimes we get some storms out of DC too, a little bit different variety, but that's a different program. Yes. Junaid, I want to hear more about your podcast, and I'd love to have you share with your community. Tell us about Hacks and Hobbies. What's going on with your program?
Absolutely. So on Hacks and Hobbies, it was a passion project turned into a connection generation. Basically, how it all started was I love hobbies. I am very passionate about technology. I've backed over 280 Kickstarter campaigns, and what happened is my good friends, my colleagues were like, "Hey, what's your new hobby this week?" So I was like, "You know what? I just finished my beekeeping class. I'm gonna be a beekeeper. So why not I start another hobby and talk about my beekeeping journey?" So the entire first season of Hacks and Hobbies is all about beekeeping, my cycling journey, woodworking, video production, all of that stuff. And then as I kept going, I was like, hey, this is really fun. Let me find other people that might have turned their hobbies, their side hustles into main hustles. So I've talked to over 200 people, entrepreneurs, movie producers, actors, speakers, authors from all walks of life. And as I listened to their stories and their journeys and how they were able to do it, I learned how to tell story myself. So that's how I became from a UX designer to a storyteller. And that's what we talk about on Hacks and Hobbies.
Fantastic. I love that origin story. Am I using that right?
Yes.
Graphic novel fans? Okay,
absolutely.
Good. I got to check. That's fantastic. And I can't help love the bee references, being from Bee Dance. We love bees very much. Bees are actually fantastic communicators. They have this thing called a waggle. Going off screen. Anyway, it's a multi-sensory touch and sound and vibration that helps them communicate important information to the hive. So thought I'd drop in my only knowledge of bees, and that's it. Okay, so wonderful. Junaid and Lisa, it's so great to have you on our program and get to know a little bit about you, but I know our community is excited. They come here to hear you talk about this topic. Excuse me. I'm so excited. I can't even speak. So I'm going to get to the topic by opening this up. Are webinars dead? Webinars are dead? I didn't see this in the New York Times, Lisa. That's the paper of record. I didn't see that. So I'm usually behind the trends, although my team works hard to keep me current. Where are we with webinars? And maybe should we start first, Lisa, with a level set definition for our audience? In your opinion, what does webinar mean? What is a webinar? What makes a webinar distinct from something else?
Well, if you ask me, when you say webinar, the typical person thinks of something that they're going to turn on and watch, and it's kind of like TV. You know, you're not going to get to interact with it. You're just going to be talked at. So although it might not be in the New York Times, I know through the grapevine that people are definitely saying, please let the webinar be dead, because they are definitely craving a different type of experience, and it's something we should all be striving for.
Fantastic. Junaid, what would you add as you define webinar, right? Webinar is a term, it's been around for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, webinar basically came to the being as the web became more and more apparent and easy to use, essentially. But the original word comes from seminars. We attended seminars. We would go in a room and where a person would talk to you, and so there is a little bit of connotation about sales, about something at the end of this webinar. I'm gonna have to take out my wallet. I'm gonna have to pay something or get something to be satisfied. So that's my thought behind seminar and why people would not want to go away from it, or why they want it dead, maybe.
Sure. And Lisa, not beating up Florida too much, but I've been to a couple of seminars about timeshares in Florida. I've come away with some nice tchotchkes, but I did spend a good amount of my time down there. It's an interesting tie back to an old in-person format, I think, right, as Junaid has identified, and been around as the web has grown up. And, as I recall webinars, and I've been to a number of these things, right, I sort of have this feeling of a kind of a very basic experience, typically an audio, right, someone with kind of an annoying voice like your erstwhile host here. And there's some slides, some very dense slide content, usually in like 6-point font. There's no images, right? So that's kind of what comes to mind. And it's something, man, unless you're really into the topic, difficult to stay focused and engaged.
Yeah.
Does that ring true as you think about, the connotation of your classic webinar format?
That's definitely true. And my experience more with webinars, because we deal with corporate America so much, a lot of them are used for training purposes and meeting purposes. And interestingly enough, there's been a lot of statistics that I've been reading. In fact, 65% of attendees have said that they are doing something else entirely other than watching the webinar. So that in and of itself should be a huge wake-up call to people. And another interesting statistic is that 24% of people are actually completely drained and exhausted by the typical webinar because they're just, so staid. They're looking for something else. They want more.
We love data here at Cadence. We're very data driven. Thank you for bringing those stats. 65% are doing something else. Now, I know that's true when I'm on camera. Clearly not when our special guests are talking. But that's a real problem, Lisa. You're trying to connect with these people. Presumably, right, if you're going to do a webinar and go to the trouble of it, there must be some business objective that one has, right? You don't want 2/3 of your audience checked out. That can't be a formula for success.
No, definitely not. And in fact, the typical person can only hold attention for about 7 minutes at a time. So you've really got to look for ways to keep them involved in what's happening. And there's lots of little tips and tricks that you can do to ensure that that happens.
Fantastic. So we're going to get to some of those. Don't reveal all of the tips and tricks yet. We got to hold our community here, right? Just like TV, we're going to hold that over the break. We don't have commercials, folks, so we're not going to do that to you, but we will hold you in suspense. Meanwhile, Junaid, I want to come back to this point that you mentioned because I think this is really interesting and it leads to potentially some discussion about another important stakeholder group beyond the audience, the target audience for a webinar. As you talk about kind of that sales aspect of a traditional seminar type of program, and that may have translated into webinars where, you get some information, right? You're seeking some knowledge, but at the end, there's some kind of pitch, right? No pitch here at Cadence, folks, only valuable perspectives. But that's kind of an interesting formula. And yet, is it effective? Or is it tune audiences out? Do they know that's coming and therefore tend to not participate as much?
I think there's two aspects to it, right? So the number one aspect is, for example, a couple of years ago, I went to an in-person event, right? Tony Robbins were going to present, but before Tony Robbins came on, there was a bunch of people that went up there and talked about what you can do and how to raise money and how to make money. And there was one real estate investor guy. So he went up there, he talked about his journey, he talked about his story, and everybody at the end of that seminar, right, went to a desk because they now wanted in. Like, hey, here's my money. I want to know more about it, right? So there's multiple things about a webinar. Either you're into it or either you're tuned out. Like, you know what? I thought this was going to be awesome. I want my money back kind of thing. But maybe at the other end, like, okay, this is really going to turn me on and get me to the point where I'm going to be in the next 5 years. Now, it all comes down to where each of us are in our lives and which stage of things, what stage of our life are we in? Because sometimes they say, hey, go read your book. Once you read a book, go back to that book a year later and then a year later, and you're going to pick up different things from that book. Now, I'm probably going off topic, but I think that's where the webinars have a two thing, right? Either you're really into it and maybe you're tuned out, or maybe you don't have enough money right now, but you really need to get that knowledge so then you can move on to the next step.
Gotcha. So I think what's interesting is the dissatisfaction that seems to have emerged from the traditional model. And it strikes me that we're having this conversation because all of us, I'll just say that loosely speaking, have gone through our own transformation, right, over the past 18 to 24 months. Yes. Forced on all of us, right? We've all become experts in these different technologies, right, that we're sharing, Zoom being one of them. Junaid, I love the alternate shot there. That's fantastic. Makes me jealous. All I have is this taupe colored wall. Nevertheless, it's an improvement over my previous gray wall. So we're making progress. And I will note for the audience, if anybody needs tips or tricks on setting up a great studio, right, and really making yourself look great on camera, contact Junaid, because believe it or not, I looked worse than I do now in rehearsal. So we did benefit from some of those updates. But I think, let's talk a little bit about the dissatisfaction, because I really want to get to the heart of, like, why is the webinar dead? Why is this format over? Is it just that it's boring? Is it that it's not engaging enough? Is it that people can't learn because it's just not, like, entertaining? Where are we on this, Lisa? What are the key drivers of dissatisfaction that are sending this anachronistic model to the retirement home, if you will?
All of the above. I mean, nobody likes to be popped at, right? You want to have a conversation. I reckon it to like a first date where the guy does all the talking and never asks you a single question or it is involved in any way. You go home at the end and you're like, okay, done. It's kind of like that, right? You want to feel like you've got input. You want to get sucked in and immersed in whatever's happening. You want creative ways to get that information across to you as well, because you always learn more by doing and being engaged than you do by just listening.
Fantastic. Junaid, you help folks with their presence online. How do you advise them as they're looking to get into, delivering more engaging content, right? And keeping their audience not just connected, but integrated?
Yeah, so one way that I've seen and I've told people is, number one, you got to be really comfortable in your own skin. Now, as I'm listening to Lisa and you talk about the webinars, there's memories arising in my head around what webinars and because the technology is so available, anybody can go and launch a webinar, right? So more and more people are jumping on, but they're not getting the proper training on how to be a public speaker. Like it's a lot of work to really think about what you're saying and what you're delivering. And when you have that coming through the camera, coming through, you then basically become a better engager. You're attracting people because not only are you passionate about it, you're talking to the audience, you're asking them questions and telling them, hey, don't hesitate to stop me. Don't hesitate to ask me a question. This is not something that, you have to wait and listen to the whole thing and then you ask a question. No, you have to be more engaging, more human, if I may add.
I love that. My wife tells me to be more human quite often. So it's something I can relate to. Junaid, this is a really important point, right? The humanness, and I jest, of course, but the human quality that comes through. And I think you get that certainly more being in person, as we all appreciate, and we're dying to get back together again. But video is like the next best thing, right? I can see your faces, your beautiful smiling faces. I can see your reaction. I know I've been trained over the course of my life to know what these reactions mean. And so we can actually have a really good conversation here. Can't have that if you don't have video. Can't have that if you don't have opportunities for conversation and dialogue. And again, not just among the three of us, but as we move into our second segment, which I know you're excited to get to, right? We're going to engage with our community and have a completely different type of experience. So this is advanced really quickly as a result of this pandemic. But it's not just about designing the format better. Junaid, you talked very importantly about speakers need to develop new skills. Lisa, do audience members need new skills? I mean, we're going to ask a lot of our audience tonight. They're not just going to be passive participants. We're going to actually ask them to help co-create the rest of tonight's program. What are audience members learning to do differently that is moving us away from the old webinar?
Well, it's definitely a new world, isn't it? I mean, it used to be you could tune into a webinar, maybe your hair was in a hat, you had no makeup on. Now all of a sudden, ta-da, you're on camera. So you do have to be forewarned and prepared and ready to go. And I know that sometimes people will hang back, they're afraid to talk up, they're not sure how it all works. So I do think part of what Junaid said is, being a really good presenter is finding ways to engage people in that conversation so they'll feel comfortable and share. Not everybody does want to be the first to the podium to say, hey, I've got an idea, I want to ask a question. Maybe they're more comfortable doing that in chat. Maybe they communicate in a different manner. So I think it's just as important to prepare your audience before they come so that they are understanding and ready to participate.
Oh, I love those suggestions. Folks, I hope you're taking notes. I hope someone on my team is taking notes because I can't write and host at the same time. Lisa, these are great tips, right? People like to do things differently. We're not all the same. We love diversity, right? What makes humans awesome. Junaid, you talked in rehearsal about part of your passion is around different learning styles, right, that humans bring. This seems like this is related to what Lisa is talking about. Does enabling those different learning styles in a program help keep people engaged?
I think so. There is one aspect of it, right? So as we're presenting our video, we're essentially audio based. So people are either tuning into their audio and paying attention, and maybe they're taking notes. But then other things that I've seen is if you have a presentation, then you'll see a lot of people will take screenshots. And we've seen this in person when there's a webinar. There's a really good slide. People take out their phone, like, I'm going to take a picture of this because I can't draw fast enough. So there are multiple ways, and people want to take those pictures so then they can look back at it and then, okay, decipher it and understand it better and digest that information. So I think video gives us that opportunity, and getting better with usage of technology also helps us do better.
Excellent. I love that. And I love this human thread you both brought us to, because I think it's really fundamental, not only to who we are as a species, but to business success, right? I think we can all appreciate that treating people with dignity and respect and respecting their unique qualities, right, is a great way to do business, right? That's a great way to behave. I want to read a comment in the chat to both of you and get your reaction. I think this is a very insightful perspective. This is from Raina Abigail Levine, who I know closely. And Raina says, I think that the one thing that makes you more human to an audience is not being a perfect speaker. It's always endearing and super engaging when a CEO or leader engages with their audience in real time or becomes comfortable with dead air during a poll, or even stumbling over words. Thank you, Raina, for mentioning me in your comment. What do you think, folks? I mean, we love live TV here at Cadence, right? And I do think there's an authenticity there. Lisa, what do you think? I mean, you work with a lot of folks in your programs, some of whom undoubtedly get on camera. Do audiences want perfection like Hollywood speakers, or do they want just real?
No. I do think they want a professional, thing done, of course. But just like you said, you've got to be able to show your humanness, to use Junaid's term. I mean, I always love to, we get a lot of people who come to us for games that we'll be playing virtually, and they'll be like, oh, our top executives are going to be on, and we can't do anything silly, and I'm like, people are people and they like to have fun. And to think that everything has to be so professional and robotic for a certain level of C-suite executive always kind of gets to me, because once they do allow themselves to have fun, they love it. And not only that, their people are like, oh, cool. The CEO's doing this. Okay, now I can let my hair down and do it too. So yeah, I do think you should be able to be yourself.
Oh, that's fantastic. Junaid, anything to add to Lisa's comment or to further the discussion about humanness in these programs?
I absolutely agree, Lisa, because the more you open up, the more they're doing silly things. It's giving permission to everybody else. And when you stumble and miss the words, being somebody who's on stage, essentially, right? You're giving other people in the audience the permission, like, it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to repeat yourself, because guess what? We're all human. It brings them closer to us, shows them, hey, we're all the same. We just have a little bit more courage to be up on stage and talking, right? Just a teeny bit. But we all have the same scares. Like, am I looking right? Did I put my makeup on right? So all of those things everybody goes through. No matter if you've done 1,000 speeches, you still have butterflies in your stomach, and it's okay.
Not only is it okay, I always say if you don't have butterflies in your stomach, it's time to hang up your boots. If you're not nervous anymore, you're in the wrong biz.
Yes. Yes.
That's excellent. And also tweetable. If someone in the production team can capture that. Folks, if you'd like to share your thoughts on social media, of course, we'd appreciate that. We have an active social media campaign supporting Cadence. I want to give a nod to our partners at Ace Events. Fantastic group producing tonight's program, and every episode of Cadence. B-Dance is proud to be partnered with Ace Events. If you folks in the audience are interested in this kind of a program, reach out to Chris Nesbitt. That's the commercial portion of our program. I told the team I was going to try out a commercial tonight, so that was it. It was a low production effort, but nevertheless, Ace Events does a great job. And we do appreciate all their hard work and efforts. Lisa and Junaid, this has been a really great conversation, and I think we've explored pretty well sort of the near-death experience that webinars are facing. I think a lot of old techniques are being reevaluated now that so many people have had more experiences with digital engagement. I'd like to maybe take just a few more minutes before we move into our collaborative segment for tonight's program with our audience. And talk a little bit about, why engagement matters so much. Why is it so important that the people who attend these kinds of programs, whether we call it a webinar or a broadcast or a live experience, right, whatever the name, is it important that they also have a role to play in the program, right? Lisa, I'll start with you because you mentioned in your opening that, folks don't like to be talked at, right? And I know we're not really talking at them. We're sort of letting them watch our conversation, which is kind of cool. And then in a minute, we're going to go and have a different experience. But what's your view on that? Are audience members craving to be participants rather than simply viewers?
I think so. I mean, part of the reason why I feel like our gamification is so popular, especially since the pandemic, people are craving connection. And to be truthful with you, I think it was even before the pandemic. We all worked in cubicles. We communicated with each other via email. That has just been oomphed up with the pandemic, with the isolation. So now to give people an opportunity to actually connect as human beings and interact with people, especially when they're not in the office, that is huge right now.
That's an excellent point. And Junaid, I'd just love to hear your views on connections and how to create those in these kinds of experiences. And why is that so important to people?
Connections are so important. It's almost as important as using your brain, because if your brain was not telling something to your heart, well, guess what? Your heart's going to stop, right? So connections between humans is creates that same vigor and same power, because as I connect with another human being, we exchange ideas, we talk, and we find common ground. And when we find that common ground, it just fills you up with so much love and so much passion for each other. That's why we love creating like-minded, we like to join like-minded communities, right? I've been part of so many different communities. When I first got my camera, I joined a photographer's community, so now we can learn and talk the same lingo. When I started riding my bicycle, I joined a team of cyclists, and they would talk about gear and all of those things, right? Same with when I became a beekeeper, I'm hanging out with other beekeepers and I understand their lingo. So that's the power of connection, and human beings love being in those types of communities.
I love that. Fantastic examples. And we're all about trying to foster and facilitate connections here at Cadence. So we've started, I think we got a great start to tonight's program. Lisa and Junaid, what a great conversation. And I'm sure I've left some things out. I know I haven't addressed some important topics. You know who we're going to rely on to reset is our great community. So folks, right, we are now excited to wrap up our first segment. We always do 3 segments here. It's in my contract. Things have to be in 3s. I just have a little OCD about that. My audience knows. They're okay with it. They're like, it's all right. Anyway, so this is segment 1. Segment 2, folks, you in our community, you know the role you play, or if you're new tonight, you'll be learning what your role is, which is have a great time. We're going to all break out of our broadcast mode here shortly, and Lisa and Junaid and I will join the folks from B-Dance and ACE and others in our community out at the tables in our beautiful hall here that the ACE team has created. And folks, we encourage you to walk around from table to table, meet as many people as you can. Please engage with our very special guests. They're excited to hear what's on your mind. We want to hear your reactions to the conversation so far in segment 1. What did we not talk about that's on your mind? What challenges are you facing in your business as you look to engage with your key stakeholders? Are your webinars in need of some help, right? Do you need a webinar tune-up, maybe advance to a broadcast level, right? Whatever's on your mind, that's what we want to talk to you about. And then Lisa and Junaid have a homework assignment, which we will reveal when we come back for our final segment 3. So with that, Lisa and Junaid, thank you again for getting us kicked off and for sharing your amazing and unique perspectives with us. I can't wait to get out to our community and hear what's on their mind. So let's go there now.
Let's do it.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, and it looks like we are back in broadcast mode. Welcome back, community. Welcome back, Lisa and Junaid. It's great to see you both. Junaid, I think you're muted. We'll need to unmute you so we can hear more great perspective. There we go.
Yes.
From you both. Gosh, that was an exciting networking and collaboration segment. I really enjoyed that. And folks in our community, we hope you did as well. We are excited now to move into our final segment for the evening. Segment 3, I promised 3. We got 3. 3 is the magic number. It was a great Schoolhouse Rock. That's going to be in my head now for the next days. Okay, let's move on from Steve's boyhood experiences. I want to get to what were you guys talking about out on the floor? There was a lot of excitement in the tables I visited. I kept getting kicked out by people because they wanted to hear from you guys. So, Junaid, I'm going to go to you first. What was the buzz out on the floor? What were they talking about? Are webinars dead? Do folks have challenges? What's on people's minds in our community?
One thing that was mentioned was, how do you bring empathy back to the webinars? And I was like, that's an excellent question, because something that we start noticing is there's a lack of empathy. People are just droning, and even speakers just coming up and talking. And like, once they're delivered, they're out of there. And one of the reasons for that is because with the advent of technology, we don't get that feedback, the emotion feedback from technology when we're using it. And my daughter, who's 3 years old, right? My 3-year-old daughter, she's like, let me see the pictures. Let me see the flower, because there's a flower icon. So she'll go in there, she'll look at her own pictures that when she was a baby. Mm-hmm. And looking at that, they're not getting a lot of feedback from other humans. They're just looking at another screen. Mm-hmm. And the lack of empathy, because, well, we're not getting that human connection back. So, and that's what starting to show on these webinars. And now, mind you, these smart devices have been around for about a decade and a half, right? iOS 15 just came out, so 15 years of iPhones, right? So that shows that, okay, what's going to happen in the new generation that's coming around? There's a lack of empathy. So how do we solve that problem? Lisa, I'd love to get your feedback on that.
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. We talked a lot about the future in our room, on our table as well. What are we going to call this? Like, we hate the word webinar. We do want it to be dead. Raina was saying she was thinking multimodal. I don't know if everybody would understand what that is, but what is that new term going to be? And there was a discussion about the younger demographic, not necessarily wanting to be on video, being a little bit more reserved and not, wanting to be front and center. So we really do have to look at how do we not only empathize with those people, but get them involved without making them feel uncomfortable, as we had touched on just before we went to the tables. So are there things, for instance, that we can do in chat so they don't necessarily have to be on video? Could there be things that they share that aren't their own face? Like, one thing I love to do when we're doing a game is, who's got a pet out there, like go dark and let's see your pet, 1, 2, 3, So I guess it's just trying to wrap those different elements in. Again, we're back to humanity.
Such a great discussion about empathy. Is it hard to empathize through a digital means? Is it harder? And if so, why?
I don't think it's hard.
You're removed, right? I mean, it's easier to be like, doesn't really matter. But on the flip side, you're also front and center, and everyone's looking at you. So if you do something, you may be memorialized forever. I've heard some funny things that have happened to people who thought their camera was off, and we've all seen the lawyer who turned into a cat and what have you, and that's going to stick with you forever. So I mean, there's two sides, right? You are removed, but you're also going to be memorialized forever. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, indeed.
I think you are removed, but the way to come closer to empathy is to have more practice sessions, or more sessions with people where you go deep, like use the same medium to have all sorts of conversations. So now you're building up that empathy, how to be empathetic, how to be sympathetic, how to be happy, how to be sad, all using the same medium. Because when we meet in person, we display all of the different levels of humanity within ourselves, all the different emotions. But what if we did the same thing while we're in front of a technology? Now we're relearning how to be human, how to be how to be empathetic.
I love what you said about practicing, Junaid, right? Do it more often. I love when we do games, for instance, we'll do virtual escape room or something like that, and people are in a room and they get to communicate with each other, and people are like, what? How did you solve that? Like, that's amazing, or other people are like, no, that's not it. And someone's saying in a really tiny voice, I think it's this. And no one's paying attention to them, and they're totally right. I love that, right? And as the barriers come down, as people learn to play and interact with one another in that virtual setting, it gets easier and easier. So it shouldn't be a one and done type of thing. It does need to keep happening.
Yeah, interesting. And Raina made another comment in the chat. I'm keen to add in to this discussion. She talks about the importance for her personally of reading body language cues, right? And so, one thing I recall my high school drama teacher telling us, right, as we were on stage trying to perform and entertain our parents, was, you get big gestures, right, when you're on stage, right? And to some extent, that's the same with the little screen, right? You see me over gesticulating, right? A lot of big facial movements. I don't know if people like that or not. So folks, I'm open to the feedback. You won't hurt my feeling. I have very thick skin. So keep it coming in the chat. We love it, right? But, maybe if nothing else, like it keeps people's attention a little bit, right? Some variety and so forth. So am I on track with some of that, or am I, off my rocker here?
I think you're completely on track, because as soon as when pandemic hit, right, we started seeing our favorite late night TV shows still airing because it's in their contract. So they, no matter where they are, they're at home, they're in a hotel, they had to broadcast. Conan O'Brien would record on his iPhone his entire segment and send it over to the production team, who would then put it together and then air that thing.
Wow.
Right. So he didn't have the best lighting. Sure, he had a huge team. Like, okay, do this, because you couldn't be in physical contact. We had Jimmy Fallon. His entire family was his production crew, right? He would bring them in every once in a while. So showing more human, it's okay. It's okay to break stuff down and show the vulnerable part of being human. And I'm sure we all remember the one webinar before pandemic hit, where this gentleman in I think it was Sweden or somewhere in Europe. He's giving this presentation, and the door opens and the kid walks in,
Yes.
and then
BBC TV. That's right.
right, and then this lady crawled in, and she's like, "Let me get you out of here." And people started making comments about who this person was. It was his wife, taking the kid back out. But now it's like, oh, here's my dog, here's my kids. Every once in a while, I just heard my kids came home already. So there might be somebody, a special guest appearing later
Exactly.
today.
Well, that's what Tim was saying at our table, that now we're in each other's living rooms. And Fallon was like, not necessarily wanting my colleagues in my living room in the past, but now they are there, and they're getting to see a glimpse into us. And so it was an interesting comment that rhinoplasty is on the upswing because people are seeing themselves on video more, and they're like, oh, wow, I never had any idea my nose was that big. So they're getting them fixed. But that's kind of sad. Like, be you and bring your kids on and, show what your interests are in your background. I apologize for my very boring background tonight, but I'm in a hotel room and I had no choice. So I think that's kind of cool too. Like, why not try and connect with people that way?
Well, I think that's a great point. And, back to the discussion in segment 1 about humanness, we're all sort of now in a position where, like it or not, people are going to get some exposure to our lives beyond what they might have seen in an office setting, right? And even in the most controlled, hermetically sealed offices like I live in, right, bunker deep underground, occasionally these cats wander in, they find a way, and they traipse across the screen. But, it reveals a little bit of vulnerability, which I think makes us all more human. Yes. And to me, allows people to be more accessible. And do you feel that as well? And is accessibility in digital programming and engagement important for a successful outcome?
I think so. Accessibility is absolutely something that makes us more human because, hey, if I show a mistake that I made on live stream, oh, I forgot to turn on the microphone and I'm just talking and talking, like, we can't hear you, and there's text coming in like, oh, I'm sorry, I let me repeat, and then turn the microphone on. It shows them, oh, it's okay. They have, everybody has mistake just like us. So yeah, I think it's very important to be relatable.
You guys should see my blooper reel. It's tremendous. Sorry, Lisa, you were going to go.
I was going to say, but again, remember, accessibility isn't for everybody, right? So one of our younger people at the table were saying, that's not necessarily their jam. So I do think that we have to figure out ways that we can involve them. So for instance, putting puzzles and games up on a share screen, while you're taking a quick break, and people can try and solve them, and put something in chat and maybe win a prize, doing things like a whiteboard as opposed to, hey, we're going to verbally communicate, let's show a whiteboard in our meeting and have people draw their ideas and put little notes down. Depending on what platform you used, I've seen a couple that actually will allow you to put sticky notes on and add things to the presentation. I think that's where we're evolving, and I love seeing that.
I love that. And I love all the different techniques folks in the community. Hope you're taking notes. These are some great examples, and had some great discussion in the group chat as well. Want to thank our community for being active participants, both in the group chat as well as during our networking session. Fallon Cryer made a great point that there's a bit of a trust deficit, perhaps broadly speaking, right? I think we all sense it, even if your humble host can't well articulate the feeling we all have. But is trust, how does trust factor into engaging an audience or a community digitally?
Well, of course, if you feel like you're going to get slammed because you said something silly, you're not going to open up. So there has to be that, that trust that you can share without being ridiculed, you definitely need a moderator who can shut something like that down should it start, but not in a horrible way, because you also don't want to make the person who said something inadvertently that was insulting feel bad. Like maybe they didn't realize it was insulting. Right. So, maybe even ground rules before, you get started is a good thing to share with people.
Excellent.
Talking about ground rules, Toastmasters has a beautiful set of ground rules. Like you come in, everybody has, they have a set agenda. Everybody knows how to follow it, and so when there's new guests coming in, they'll walk them through like this is how the run of the show happens. This is what we're gonna do first, and this is what we're gonna do second, and we might call on you to say something, or and then we might call on people with table topics. So they have a pretty set rule and said. And if you do come up there and do your first speech, you get a standing ovation. That again, right? That just fills your heart up with all sorts of endorphins. Like, I want to do more of this, right? So you got to be able to support people no matter what they're doing.
And that was a great point that Fallon made at our table. The Art of Gathering is a book that's popular. I hadn't heard of it until she brought it up, but she said the whole event starts with the invite. And so sharing ground rules. To me, sending a video out, a teaser video, or a really cool email invite that people are like, oh, this is going to be interesting, or sending a gift box that's themed. Maybe you're doing your summer meetings, so you're sending some sunscreen and some sunglasses, and you're creating a virtual background or two that, do you want to use this because maybe you don't have your own virtual background? I just love getting people excited before the meeting even starts.
That's excellent, Lisa. And I think it speaks to the notion that the experience is always broader, right? There's pre, during, post. We've been talking about that forever. But you can really establish the right mood, right? The right tenor for an experience. And Junaid, I think your recommendation around rules and kind of ground rules, I think is really important, right? And I'm certainly no expert in anything, least of all human behavior. But I do remember learning something about how groups form, right? And there's the kind of the forming, storming, norming, performing. That model was around for years, and it was rhymey, which is why I could remember it. But I think it's kind of really important, right? And there's some talk in the chat about creating safe spaces for people to be vulnerable, to be open, to share something, to not feel like they'll be judged or criticized or looked askance, right? But that people are going to embrace that, welcome that sharing, and the uniqueness that everyone's perspective brings. I think it's an uplifting thing for humanity. We're hitting the big issues here on Cadence now.
We are.
But this was really kind of a moving thing. Some of the points that are being made here tonight. Any reaction to that? Maybe Steve loses it a couple minutes before close.
No, I totally agree, man. This is so true. Because deep down inside, we're all human. We all want the same thing, and we all walk a different path, but we're all on the same highway to get to a certain destination. And if you can tell somebody ahead of time, or like, hey, just like when Waze app, you can say, hey, there's a cop over here, there's a car stopped here, there's construction, there's weather. You're telling along the way. I think that's also what enables you to be a better speaker, better presenter. And to go back to one of my points, practice. The more practice that you do, the more comfortable you become in your skin, the more relatable you are with people, the more they want to ask you questions, the more you are attracting the type of people that you want to hang out with.
I love that.
And of course, I'm in the world of team building, right? So, I mean, I know a lot of statistics about people want to work with people that they like. They will stay in a job that pays less if they feel they're part of a good, solid team. So to use these platforms, these meeting platforms, to actually forge those connections, get to know one another as human beings, build a stronger team, and ensures that people are hopefully going to stay with you a little bit longer. I think a lot of people examined their jobs during the pandemic. And as we know, a lot of people jumped ship and they decided this isn't for them. So we have to use all of the tools in our tool belt to allow our people to feel like they're part of a community and enjoy what they're doing.
Well said. And I appreciate, Lisa, you bringing it back a little bit to, the proper mix. There was a great comment from Jacob at one of the tables. I enjoyed conversation with Jacob and Sen. And he made a comment that he thought it was really important that these programs find a good balance between making sure you achieve your professional objective, right? Why we're here from a business perspective, but also to have fun and to enjoy that experience, and that combination, that balance is really critical for people to get the most out of these experiences. And so we can't, we've talked a lot about the human aspects and empathy, things that are critically important, right? But we're here for business reasons often, and it's important as well to remember that there's an objective to be reached. On that note, any final thoughts? Junaid, I'll go to you first. Final thought for our community before we close tonight's program.
Final thought is find your passion, get started, and document that journey. Because as you go through that, you're going to learn so much more about yourself. And then you can relate it to people. You're basically leaving breadcrumbs for others to follow. And that's how we grow, right? When we're reading books, when we're taking a course, we're learning from somebody else. And so we love to learn from people that we like. And that's why we're talking about books. We're talking about, this course that I took. Right now, I am taking the course by our good friend Daniel Pink on masterclass.com, and he talks about the power of building a persuasion and how it is human to sell, because guess what, we're just telling somebody what we're passionate about and how to get to it. So it's okay to be yourself, and when you are yourself, you will attract people that are like yourself.
I love that. Junaid, Ahmed, thank you so much for being one of our very special guests tonight. I want folks to know where they can find Hacks and Hobbies. Can you share that with us, or some other? Do you have social handles you want to share with our community?
Absolutely.
Should they want to reach out?
Absolutely. So if you want to listen to the podcast, you can simply ask Siri or Alexa to play Hacks and Hobbies podcast. You can go to hacksandhobbies.com, and if you want to learn a little bit more about how to set up your studio space, you can go to homestudiomastery.com. And if you want to find me on Twitter and everywhere at Super Junaid.
Fantastic. If you've got time, if you're a fast typist, you can put some of that in the group.
Type it in.
Text chat, Lisa, I'll ask you to do the same. Lisa, where can folks find more information about what your passions are, about Wildly Different? They're going to want to come and get some help with their programs. Where do they find you?
Absolutely, wildlydifferent.com. We have all sorts of blogs and newsletters as well to help people make their activities and events more fun and immersive.
Fantastic. Wonderful. So with that, folks in our community, our wonderful Cadence community, we love you so much. Thank you again for investing some of your incredibly valuable time with us tonight. I, of course, want to thank our very special guests one more time, Junaid, Ahmed, and Lisa Jennings. Thank you so much. What a compelling conversation. Really appreciate you sharing your wonderful perspectives with us tonight. I learned a tremendous amount. I already feel more empathetic. I want to run to my wife and be empathetic because, she would be surprised. So that would be great. I always like to put into action what I've learned very quickly, so that gets into a habit forming situation. Speaking of forming habits, folks, we hope you form the habit of being with us every last Wednesday of the month. Is it last Wednesday or fourth Wednesday? I'm not good with the calendar. Next month, I think it falls on October 27th. I'm being told that we will only release the topic under a special communication. So stay tuned for that, folks. More information on next month's episode of Cadence coming to your email box shortly. And with that, I just want to thank everybody in our audience again for joining us here at Cadence. You really do make this program and experience very special. Your contributions throughout tonight's program have made this a one-of-a-kind experience, and we thank you for being co-creators of tonight's program on Cadence. I do want to thank our wonderful partners at Ace Events, Chris and his team, for the fantastic work that they do, and of course, my colleagues at Dance, who also lean in very heavily to producing this experience and opportunity for all of us. So thank you folks at ACE and Dance. And with that, I'm going to let everybody go back to the tables, folks. We're not going to kick you out. There's no hard time limits here at Cadence, but if folks want to hang out a little bit and chat some more, you're welcome to visit the tables and do so. I want to thank Lisa and Junaid again, and we'll see you on next month's episode of Cadence. I'm Steve Boyce. It's been my pleasure to host tonight's program. Thank you so much.